Part 1. The first spark. You've always kept your distance, tried to stay in your own lane. But one glance from him and everything shifts. Suddenly it feels like the world is moving in slow motion and you can't look away. But here's the catch, he's not interested. Or is he? It's hard to ignore the way someone makes you feel when everything about them draws you in like a magnet. But what do you do when the person who sparks this heat doesn't even seem to notice you? For Sarah, a shy and reserved new staff member at the office, that was the daily struggle. Every day she walked into work, did her job, kept to herself until he walked into her world. Jason, the emotionally distant supervisor everyone respected. Handsome, mysterious, but completely off-limits. Sarah had always thought of him as someone who was out of her reach, until one day something changed. A single look, a fleeting moment, and suddenly everything she thought she knew about him seemed wrong. But why does he barely acknowledge her? Is it possible he really doesn't care? Or could there be more to this story than she realized? This is the beginning of something she never expected. Welcome to the first spark. Sarah had always been the type of person who preferred the background, staying in her comfort zone. She liked being invisible, especially at work. Quiet corners of the office were where she felt safest. But that all changed when she met Jason. From the moment she saw him, she knew he was different. Jason had a presence that made him stand out in any room. He wasn't just attractive, there was something more to him. It was the way he carried himself, his focused energy, and the way he rarely spoke about his personal life. To most people, he was just a supervisor, a guy you respected from a distance. But to Sarah, he was a mystery, a puzzle she couldn't stop trying to figure out. The first few days at the office, she tried to keep her distance. Jason's sharp, calculating demeanor made her nervous. He wasn't rude, but he was always focused on work, rarely letting his guard down. But for Sarah, every encounter with him felt like an electric shock. She'd catch him glancing her way just for a second, and that was enough to send her heart racing. It wasn't until Sarah overheard a conversation between Jason and his close friend Maya that things started to shift. Maya had worked with Jason for years and knew him better than anyone in the office. From what Sarah could gather, Jason had a reputation for keeping to himself, not letting anyone get too close. Sarah couldn't help but wonder, what was it about him that made him so guarded? Was there more to him than just the quiet, mysterious supervisor everyone thought they knew? It was during one of her late afternoons at work that Sarah found herself alone in the break room with Maya. The conversation started innocently enough, but Sarah's curiosity soon got the better of her. "You know Jason, right?" Maya asked, leaning back in her chair. "Yeah, of course," Sarah responded, trying to sound casual, even though she felt her heart skip a beat. Maya raised an eyebrow. "You're not the only one who's noticed how different he is." Sarah didn't answer immediately, but inside she was screaming. She wanted to know more. She wanted to understand what made Jason tick, why he seemed so distant, and why she couldn't get him out of her head. "He's not the easiest person to get to know," Maya continued. "But if you really want to catch his attention, you might want to try something bold." "Bold?" Sarah repeated, unsure if she could handle being bold. Maya smiled knowingly. "Ask him about his workout routine. Jason's a gym guy, he loves to talk about it, but only if you bring it up first. Trust me, it'll be a good conversation starter." Sarah's mind raced. Ask him about his workout routine? That was bold, wasn't it? But Maya was right, Jason had mentioned the gym a few times, though it was never more than a passing comment. Didn't seem like something Jason would talk about unless someone brought it up first. But was Sarah really ready for that? To step out of her shell and try something? Risky? After what felt like an eternity of second-guessing herself, Sarah decided to take the plunge. The next morning, she found herself standing in front of Jason's desk, her heart pounding in her chest. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out at first. Felt like every muscle in her body was frozen, and the thought of speaking to him made her stomach twist with nerves. But then, somehow, the words escaped. "Hey, Jason. I heard you go to the gym a lot. What's your routine like?" Jason looked up, surprise flashing in his eyes. For a moment, Sarah thought she had made a huge mistake. But instead of dismissing her, he actually smiled. "Well, I usually work out in the evenings," he said, his voice casual but warm. "You know, lifting weights, a bit of cardio. Nothing too crazy." Something about the way he responded made Sarah feel a bit more at ease. This wasn't so bad. She had started the conversation, and now Jason was actually talking to her, even smiling. For the first time, Sarah felt like she wasn't invisible to him. Then came the unexpected part. Jason leaned forward slightly, his voice lowering in a way that made Sarah's heart race. "Actually, if you're interested, I usually work out at this gym downtown. I could show you a few things if you want. It might be fun." The invitation hung in the air between them. Sarah's mind was spinning. This was it. This was the moment that could change everything. Was she really going to take him up on his offer? It was the invitation that set everything in motion. Sarah had to admit she had never expected him to actually invite her to the gym. The idea of going, of spending time with Jason outside of work, was terrifying but thrilling all at once. That evening, after a day filled with anticipation, Sarah found herself standing outside the gym, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never felt more nervous in her life. What was she even doing here? What was going to happen when she saw him again in a more casual setting? Jason was already inside, waiting for her, his tall frame easy to spot through the glass doors. When he noticed her, he waved her over with a grin. Sarah forced herself to smile, even though she could feel her nerves crawling up her spine. She stepped inside, the sound of the gym's equipment filling the air, but it wasn't enough to drown out the racing thoughts in her mind. She tried to focus on the workout, but everything felt different. Being this close to him, the way his presence seemed to overwhelm the room, made everything feel intense, charged with a sort of electricity that she couldn't ignore. As they walked toward the weight section, Jason started explaining his routine in more detail, but Sarah couldn't help but notice how he'd subtly lean in a little closer whenever he spoke to her. His voice was calm, controlled, but there was something about it that sent shivers down her spine. It wasn't just the workout routine he was sharing, there was an undeniable energy between them that felt impossible to ignore. The spark that had started in the office, the one Sarah thought she could keep at bay, had somehow ignited into something far stronger. The connection between them was growing, and she couldn't deny that, deep down, she was starting to wonder if Jason had been more interested in her than she had first thought. For Sarah, everything was changing. She had started out trying to stay hidden, to keep a safe distance from the world around her. But now she was standing here in a gym with Jason, feeling something shift between them. The quiet, reserved supervisor had opened up in ways Sarah had never expected, and she couldn't help but feel like this was just the beginning of something more. But as she watched him move through his routine, Sarah couldn't help but wonder, was Jason truly interested in her? Or was this all just an act to pass the time? And if he was interested, where would it lead? Could she really trust the feelings stirring inside her? She would have to wait and see. If you want to find out what happens next, make sure you subscribe and stay tuned for part 2 of this story.